Welcome to another video in the series where I rank the roller coasters I've ridden by the manufacturer. Last time we looked at Gerstlauer, go check that out if you haven't already. So today we will look at my favourite roller coasters from B&M. I've ridden 16 of these and I do intend to talk about each and every one, so I think we need to swiftly get into this video. B&M is short for Bolliger and Mabillard, who were founded in 1988 when Walter Bolliger and Claude Mabillard left another Swiss manufacturer, Giovanola. Surprisingly, they both agreed never to make amusement rides again, but they were eventually asked by Six Flags Great America to build a stand-up coaster like they had previously done with Giovanola. Eventually, Six Flags Great America opened Iron Wolf, which became Bolliger and Mabillard's first independent roller coaster, and that opened in 1990. Since then, they've gone on to build over 100 roller coasters, and they're still building more to this day. In my opinion, all of their rides are great quality, but since they were founded, I've not really seen a great progression. For example, new Intamin rides are noticeably better than the older ones, while this progression is not very noticeable in B&M at all. That's why many of these roller coasters will be very similar in quality, making this a difficult list to make. So at number 16, my least favourite B&M is Kraken at SeaWorld Orlando. This does make a long ride and there is a brilliant variety of inversions, but unfortunately for me the whole thing is just overshadowed by some painful head banging. So yeah, I just found the ride really forgettable in the end. It's such a shame because I think this ride had a great potential, but I couldn't really focus on the ride because the head banging was just too bad. Number 15 is Shaker at Busch Gardens Tampa, and I don't really know why I dislike this one so much. Well, I don't really dislike it. I mean, it's still decent, but I just don't really like dive coasters very much. They seem too reliant on the vertical drops, and I feel like they're disappointing. Like, they look huge and everything, but in reality the first drop doesn't make a coaster, it's about what happens afterwards, and for me, not really much happens other than the drops, so yeah, Shaker is number 15. Another dive coaster is Baron 1898 at Efteling, and this is a really good ride. It's interestingly smaller than the normal dive coaster. It only got 6 seats across, so it also has a smaller drop, but for me the best thing about this ride is the theming. It's got a pre-show before you get on the ride and a pre-show on the ride, but the actual ride itself is just pretty average. It is really smooth and it's enjoyable, but it's very short. You can't really compete with the other rides above it in this list. The third dive coaster in a row is Oblivion at Alton Towers, and it's probably surprising to see this above the other two dive coasters, but for whatever reason I've got a soft spot for this and I just love the whole experience. It always has a short queue, so that's always a good thing, and I love the soundtrack for it as well. Yeah, just the experience, because it's over so quickly, but you can just get straight on it again, and the tunnel is really cool as well. Number 12 is the incredible Hulk Coaster at Universal's Islands of Adventure in Florida, and this is really incredible, to be honest, just as it says in the name. I love the launch out of that tunnel straight into a zero-G roll, and then it's got a cobra roll over the lake, which is one of the most iconic elements probably in the world of roller coasters. It does have a very intense corkscrew as well, but that goes straight into a mid-course brake run, and after that the ride's just really plain, boring and forgettable. So the second half sort of spoils this a little bit, I think. Number 11 is Mant at SeaWorld Orlando, and to be honest, this is a pretty average roller coaster, but it does have one element which is got to be one of the most insane elements I've ever ridden on a roller coaster, and I think I'm going to spend a lot of my time talking about that. It is the pretzel loop. So you go straight up into it, such a great feeling of airtime, and straight after that you dive back under yourself, you go onto your back, and it's so intense. The ride pushes you right into your seat on your back, and yeah, that's incredible, but it is quite uncomfortable in the flying position, which is why I think if this was a sit down or an inverted coaster I would enjoy it a bit more. Not like a pretzel, it would be realistic on one of those, but it's still a good ride. I prefer Galactica, another flying coaster, over Manta because it's a little bit less extreme, and obviously you're going to want roller coasters to be extreme, but I feel like as a flying coaster, it's got to be more graceful, it's got to simulate that feeling of flying, but Manta just doesn't do that. Manta's a little bit rough, whereas Galactica is just so smooth and you feel so free. It actually feels like you're flying, in my opinion. It was also my first roller coaster that went upside down. It's probably the ride that sent me on my way to becoming an enthusiast, so I like it especially because of that. Number 9 is a wing coaster. It's Phoenix at Toverland, and this is a ride that let me down quite a lot actually. The restraints just spoil it completely. You've got a vest restraint which constantly pushes down on you, so it does have some good airtime from off-ride. It looks like it's got good airtime, but the restraints just pull you right into your seat, so you don't actually get any airtime. The ride is quite rattly as well. It is a little bit rough in my opinion, but it's decent. But yeah, it just let me down so much, and I was quite sad that it wasn't as good as I thought it would be. Another wing coaster is Swarm at Thorpe Park, and this has the same restraints as Phoenix, but fortunately this ride is quite a bit smoother. It doesn't have a rattle at all, and I think it's a little bit longer as well. I like the head chopper moments on this. Phoenix has head choppers as well, but I feel like just with the advertising board it feels more thrilling in a way. We're now approaching towards the inverted coasters, which in my opinion are a masterpiece of B&M. It's definitely some of the best coaster types that they've made. And Nemesis Inferno is my favourite roller coaster at Thorpe Park. It's just so smooth, and it's got some very intense moments. Like it's one of them where it tingles your toes. You feel like the blood's all going to your toes, and yeah, I do like this ride. It's really good. I rode Silver Star at Europa Park 5 years ago, so my memory on it is not too great, but I just remember it being absolutely insane. I don't know if it's because I was younger, so maybe if I rode it now it wouldn't be as good, but I just remember it being just so incredible. And I mean, you can look at the hills and you can imagine that you could get some really good airtime off it. It was my first huge coaster, and I remember being terrified before I got on it. Kicking off the top 5 is Mako at SeaWorld Orlando, and this is really good. The airtime was a bit disappointing for me, but I did ride it in the morning because there was a thunderstorm, so I didn't get to ride it later. So I think if I did ride it in the afternoon, it probably would be higher up in this list, but since I didn't experience that, I can't really put it that high. But it's so smooth, and that first drop is very amazing. It's got one of the best views that any coaster's got. You can see some other theme parks. I think you can see Aquatica, SeaWorld's water park, and yeah, it's really good. I think it was a little bit disappointing, but still a great coaster. Number 4, of course, is Nemesis at Alton Towers, and this is very unique for inverted coasters. It's a John Wardley masterpiece. There's none other coasters like this at all. The way that it's built into the terrain, yeah, it's just incredible. A lot of UK enthusiasts will have it as their number 1 in the country. It's very close to that for me. But yeah, it's very intense, and for some reason the GP don't love it as such, so it has a short queue so you can keep going back on it, and I don't think it's that rough. Maybe if you're sitting towards the back you can get a little bit of head banging, but it's not that bad at all, and yeah, I really do like Nemesis. Number 3 is Montu at Busch Gardens, and this is a brilliant coaster. It's got a nice theme. I think they could have added a bit more theme into it, but it's definitely got that Egyptian decor. It does have its terrain interactions, but not to the same extent as Nemesis. You can see it above the ground for quite a lot of it. It's a bit taller than Nemesis, and the drop is pretty fun. Nemesis doesn't really have much of a drop at all. It just steadily goes towards the ground. It's not very steep, but this does have a fairly steep drop, and it's got a brilliant 0G roll, a very intense batwing element, and it's a long ride. So yeah, obviously I'm going to enjoy Montu, and it's really good. I recommend you going out to Busch Gardens to ride it. Also at Busch Gardens is Cumber, and this is very similar to Montu actually. If you look at the types of elements and the length, it is very similar. It goes into a drop, into a vertical loop, into a sidewinder or a Immelman, and 0G roll, then a Cobra roll, which is very similar to a Batwing. So they are very similar rides, and I guess Busch Gardens followed the formula that was successful with Cumber to make Montu, and Cumber is a very good ride. It's smooth and it's very intense. I've talked about this controversial opinion before on my channel, but my favourite B&M is Osiris at Park Asterix. This was the first inverted coaster to not feature a pre-drop, and since then B&M have never built a roller coaster with a pre-drop again. The fact that it doesn't have a pre-drop means that you dive straight down without any anticipation, and that makes this drop on this coaster incredible. One of the best drops I've ridden on any roller coaster, so this definitely led the way. Osiris also dives into the ground quite a lot throughout its layout, and each time it does that you get airtime, and it's a brilliant feeling. You don't normally see it on inverted coasters, but you do get it on this one. So that is the end of this list. It has been quite a lot longer than normal, but if you have reached the end of the video, thank you for that. So I hope you've all enjoyed watching, and that's all from me. Goodbye.